and welcome to Pharma-Code. My name is Raphael, and in today's video we will be building a BMI calculator using Python. And I like to use Python because it's very, I would say, easy to use programming language. It makes it easier for you to write scripts that you can run very easily. Setup is also very simple. Just download Python from the Python website, install on your computer, and you're good to go. Like, it's that straightforward. As a health professional, you might need to do a number of calculations. Most of them are constantly on a daily basis, so sometimes it helps to have a script handy to help you get some things done. So that's one of the motivation of having a video like this, to help you probably get yourself in the mood of writing scripts to help your daily tasks. So right now on my screen I will be pulling up the Python IDLE shell. I have Python 3.11 installed. Okay. First thing would be to understand what BMI is. So BMI is body mass index. It's generally is a system that has come up over the years and has been used to classify the human body in relation to its weight, to see if the body is underweight, normal, or overweight. And as a health professional, we understand this. The BMI gives us an index of if the person is healthy as regards to his weight, and if the person is overweight, what disease conditions the person is prone to, things like diabetes, hypertension, and the likes. And so there are tons of materials out there you could read up on what the BMI index is used for. So to get, one of the things I like to do is to get reference material. So first off, we want to understand the formula for calculating BMI. It's a very common formula out there. Even non-health professionals are aware of this. So you basically take the weight of an individual, divide by the height squared of the individual, and this is using the metric system. A lot of the calculations I'm going to be doing would be in the metrics, because I guess I grew up with the metric system, right? So keep weight in kilograms with height in meters. So this is from cdc.gov website, and I also have a few reference materials opened here. This is from WikiHow, weight over height squared, and this is from Wikipedia, mass over height squared. So it's a unified, it's a generally acceptable formula for calculating the BMI. And so now that we have our theories right, the next thing we need to do is have a workflow. How do we want this BMI calculator to run? And so I'll be writing. So on the Python interface, you can write comments. Comments are basically lines that you do not want the compiler interpreter to run. You just want it's human readable, understandable texts that you just want to put at various points in your code so you can understand what is going on. So I'm going to be writing a couple of comments. First thing we want our calculator to do is receive inputs from the user, process inputs. So we want it to process and calculate. So this can be process or calculate inputs, and then we also want it to display the results. So those, I would say those are the three things that we want our BMI calculator to do. That is a workflow that we'll be using. So that sounds good to me. So let's start. First thing we know, we want our calculator to display information to user. Any useful application should tell a user what it does and how to use it. Like every software or any application should tell you, this is what I do and this is how to use me, and we would try to print certain information on the screen so that the user can understand how to use this calculator. So we would do something like so on Python, to display information we use print. Print is the function that displays information to the user. So we would say the title is BMI calculator by Pharma-Code, I guess. So BMI calculator. We also want to print instructions. So we would say something like input the weight. Yes, input the weight in kilograms, and height, that is in meters, to calculate the BMI. So that's the instructions and what we expect the user to do. And we would do something like, so one, we want to receive the inputs from the user, and we declare a variable called weight is equal to input. So we would do something like, we want to display a string that explains now is the time to input the weight. So we would do something like, I think I like to be very explicit, so we'll say input the weight in kilograms. So this input function will receive the weight from the user, and then the height as well. Input height in meters. Okay, now that we have this two, one thing we so any input from the user in Python is always treated as a string. So whenever the user inputs this, of course we're expecting them to input numbers, right? But these values are technically strings, and so before we can work with them, before we can start this, before we move to step 2, which is process and calculate the inputs, we want to convert these strings into numeric formats. So even though the user inputs 70, in programming, those that are familiar with computer programming will understand various data types. So we have strings, ints, floats, decimals, and all of that. I'm pretty sure with Python as well, there are a number of data types, right? And so when it comes to receiving inputs, they are going to come in as strings, and then we need to convert them to a number format. So I think we'll be using floats, because we are pretty sure all of these values, weights and heights, are in decimal formats. Like they have a dot after them, they are not whole numbers, so we'll be using floats for them as opposed to using int. So we want to convert our weights into so I'm going to try to put some comments in this code. So this is going to be display title and usage texts. So here we are receiving inputs, receive inputs. We need to convert inputs to numerical forms. So we're gonna be doing weight. So the function to convert to a float is going to be just float, and then we pass on the values. So whatever string it was, going to convert it to a float. The same thing for height. So now that we have this value, so now these variables here at this point they are now, these variables that were received here are strings. At this point they should become floats, which are numeric formats, and then we can calculate. So we're gonna calculate BMI here, and then we know our BMI. I'm creating a new variable called BMI to hold the result of this calculation. So our BMI from our reference text is weight divided by height squared. So we're going to be doing this, weight divided by, we're going to put this in brackets, height times height. So this means weight divided by, then this bracket means evaluate this first, so it's going to be height multiplied by height, and that is squared. There's a shorter way of doing this. We could do height. In Python, when you do double star, it means raised to the power of. So this means height raised to the power of 2. So weight divided by height raised to the power of 2. Now this contains our BMI. Now we know our BMI is most likely going to have multiple decimal points, and we are probably only concerned with maybe 1 or 2 decimal points, but I'm going to try to round up our BMI into 1 decimal point. So to round it up, we're going to use the Python's round function, which takes in the value as a first argument and the number of decimal places you want to round up to as a second argument. So this is going to be round BMI comma 1, which is rounding up BMI into this value here, the variable here, into 1 decimal place. And once that is done, we want to display the results. So we're going to do print again, and we're going to do BMI is equal to, we can do this. So now when we do something like this is going to fail because it's going to try to sum up a string with a float, and that doesn't work. So we need to convert this BMI into a string, and so to do that we can do this. We can use a string function. The string function will convert this float variable into a string, and then it can be displayed all together as a string, so we can display this result. So I think we pretty much have this logic all sorted out. We are receiving inputs here, we are processing our inputs here, and then we are displaying our results here. So let's try to run this. So it needs to be saved. I'm going to just save it in my folder, BMI calculator. So let's call this BMI calculator. So now when this is run, we can see here that it displays the title, Pharma-Code BMI calculator, input the weight and height to calculate BMI. So now it's asking for the weight in kilograms. I'm just going to input 65, input the height in meters. I'm going to input 1.5 meters. Then I hit the enter key, and then it calculates that the BMI is 28.9. So that works. So we have our functioning BMI calculator. So this looks good. However, there are certain things that we need to do to this script to make it much more okay as a script. So I think I should put out the disclaimer again. I'm not an advanced Python user. I work with in my day-to-day work I work with C#, and so so Python is just something I use on the side. So all you Python lovers out there or Python users out there, pardon my errors. So a couple of things we're going to do to clean up the script so it all looks good. first off, we want to do this. We want to say if underscore underscore name is equal to main, then we want to run the main function. So basically what this means is that we want to ensure that this script is only run, this part of this code only runs when we actually running the script. And to ensure that there are no ambiguity, maybe when you are importing the script, there are no errors, there are no unnecessary global variables and all of that. We want to make sure that this script only runs when we are running the script, not when we are importing it or something else like that. So what we want to do is we want to write a function, a main function that encapsulates all of this. And so in Python, we're going to define a function called main. This is how to define a function called main. And we're going to move all of this into an indent under the main function. So this means that whenever we're calling this main function, all of this is going to run. So I'm going to save this real quick and I'm going to run this, and then let's see if it's all good. Yes, it's good because it ran the application. I input 70, I input 1.6, and then it calculates the BMI 27.3. Yeah, that looks good. And a couple of things I'm also going to try to do. I'm going to try to clean up this a bit. I think one of the things I want to do is this, because this method can fail if the user inputs a text that is not convertible to floats, to a numeric format. So let me give you an example. Let me demonstrate what I'm trying to say. So input the weights in kilograms and the user enters ABC, which is invalid, right? And then ABC again. You would see it has this error, value error, could not convert string to float, ABC. And that makes sense, because how do you convert ABC to numbers, right? So I think we should put this in such a way that it can catch this exception and then display a warning to the user. Generally, there is this rule about programming: never trust human input. So we're going to try to sanitize that. So I'm going to try to create a function called convert to float. And this convert to float method, I want it to receive a value. The value is going to be a string, and it should return a float originally, right? That's what we want. So I'm going to write a try-catch method, a try-catch block that tries to convert this value. And then if it fails, it's going to enter this exception block here, and it's going to print out invalid inputs. Please input numbers, something like this, and then we want to exit this. So how do we graciously exit on Python? I believe we can import sys, and then we can do sys.exit. So let me explain what I tried to do here. So I wrote a method here that takes in a value, a method here that has an argument of value, which is a string format, and then this method should return a float, which is a number. And what it tries to do here would be, it will try to convert this to a float, but if it fails, if there's an error, there's an exception along the way, it's going to catch that exception and it's going to print invalid inputs, please input numbers. Let's use numbers only, and then it's going to exit. Now how do we exit? I have to import system here. So when I import 6, I can then do 6.exit, which means gracefully close this application because the user inputted the wrong values. So I'm going to try to do this now. Convert to float. I'm going to put this method here. Convert to float, which I'm hoping should work. So let's run this. Okay, the value is 70 kilogram weight with 1.5 meters height. Yes, BMI is 31.1. So all that works. Oh, I'm meant to also test the invalid format. So if the user inputs ABC, yeah, it gracefully fails saying invalid input, please input numbers only. And for some reason, I cannot spell invalid correctly, so it's meant to be INVALID, invalid input, please input numbers only. Okay, so that seems to work well. Another thing we want to try to do is, I think this calculate BMI can be a method. So we're going to try to write another method that receives inputs and then converts, receives the height and the weight and then returns the BMI value. So I'm going to call that method calculate BMI, and that is going to receive the weight, which is going to be a float, and then the height, which is also going to be a float, right? And then I expect this to return a float value. So I can just copy and paste this really here. So I mean, I'm going to say BMI is equal to the weight, which is going to be passed into this method, and the height, which is going to also be passed into this method, raised to the power of 2, and then we round our BMI, and then we return the value. So whenever we call this method here, it should return a valid BMI value. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to say BMI is equal to, so let's rewrite this. BMI is equal to calculate BMI. I just need to pass in the weight and then the height and then clean this. So this should do it. So whenever I call BMI, this variable should be equal to calculate BMI, the weight and the height. It goes here, runs this method, calculates the BMI, returns the value, and then we can print out the BMI. So let's see how this works. Run model. Okay, so we're gonna input 70 again with 1.5, and then this returns a BMI of 31.1. Okay, so this looks pretty much clean and good. I think one other critical thing we might be missing here is the BMI class or BMI category. So where we categorize BMI values as underweight, normal, overweight, or obese. And I'm going to go back to my reference materials here. Okay, so cdc.gov doesn't have much on BMI class. I believe they probably do, but I have other reference materials opened here that talks about the BMI class. So we have any value under 18.5. It means that the individual is underweight. If it's 18.5 to 24.9, that's normal. 25 to 29 is overweight, and over 30 is obese. So I'm going to try to write a method that should be able to help us classify our BMI values. So I'm going to define a method here called BMI category. So I'm expecting it to have the arguments of BMI, which is be a float, and I think it can return a string. So I can't use, I'm going to try to use if and else conditions here to be able to check the value and let the program know if it's going to be underweight, normal, overweight, or obese. So I'm going to do something like if the BMI is less than 18.5. So let's check our reference material again. So 18.5 is underweight, right? Okay, so I'm going to say if it's less than 18.5, return underweight. Okay, else if BMI is greater than or equal to 18.5 and BMI is less than, so we're going to look for values between 18.5 and 24.9. So I'm going to use 25 here because this seems to be the upper limit. So I'm going to say the BMI is less than 25. That should be good for it to return normal. And then else if again the BMI is greater than or equal to 25 and BMI is less than, so 29.9, here's 30 is the upper limit, so I'm going to do less than 30. It should return overweight. At this point we could end it in an else because we've basically covered all of our conditions. Yeah, return obese because the value is either going to be less than 18.5 or 18.5 to 25, 25 to 30. Otherwise anything above that should return a string called obese. So I think that is pretty much covered with the standard BMI category. So now we want to print out this value to the user. So I'm going to say the BMI is this. We can also say, I'm going to declare a variable here in our main method here. So I'm going to say BMI. Okay, I think I would like to rename this to get BMI. So what I've tried to do here is to utilize my method called get BMI category, which should take in the BMI value and then return a string of whatever category it falls in. So I'm going to try to do this. BMI category is equal to get BMI with the BMI value, and then once I have this value here, I should be able to print it out as print BMI category with the category here. So let's try to run this and let's see how it goes. So I'm going to input 71.5 and then enter. So here it says the BMI is 31.1 and the category is obese. So that seems to work well. I'm going to just try to do some cleanup here, cleaning up some unnecessary comments. And so now we have just a quick recap. First and first, we are saying that this script should only run when we are running the script directly, and then should run the main function. And then in the main function here, we're saying to display the title and the usage texts. So it's displaying the title, Pharma-Code BMI calculator, is displaying all the inputs, how to use the calculator, which is saying input the weight and the height to calculate the BMI, and then we're collecting the inputs from the user, asking using the input method, and we're converting those inputs into numerical formats. So we are saying convert to float. We wrote our own convert to float method, which takes in the argument of the weight in string and the height in string. And what that does is it tries to convert these string values into floats. And if this fails, for whatever reason, if the user inputs alphabets instead of numbers, then it's going to tell the user that it's an invalid input, they should please input numbers only, and then it's going to gracefully exit the application that if that error occurs. And then once it receives this form, once it converts this to numbers, then we can run our calculate BMI method, which takes in the weight and the height. And in our calculate BMI method, what we're trying to do is take the weight divided by the height raised to the power of 2, and then we round up that value to 1 decimal place, and then we return the value. And so and then we return the value. Once we return the value, here is our BMI, we then display the value to the user. We also try to get the category of the BMI, which is this method here called get BMI category, which takes in the BMI value, and then a number of if and else if statements runs here to check if the value is less than 18.5, return this, if it's in this value, return this, and all of that. And then once it does that, it gets the BMI category, and then it prints out the results. So that pretty much looks good. Let's try to run our calculator once again with multiple inputs, and then let's see how it does. So this time we're going to try to see values that are obese, overweight, normal, and underweight. So I'm going to do something like 70 kg with a very tall person. Let's say this person is 2 meters tall. So this person has a BMI of 17.5, category is underweight, right? So we're going to run another one. This time we're using the same 70 kg person, but we're going to say the person is 1.8 meters tall, and then it says 21.6 is the BMI, and the category is normal. Okay, that looks good. Running this again, this time 70 kg instead of 1.8, the person is 1.6 meters tall, and then 27.3 is the BMI, and the category is overweight. And then the final run, 70 kg instead of 1.6, we do 1.4, and then BMI is 35.7, the person is obese. So all that looks good. Another reason why we have this method all split out is such that it's easier to write unit tests. So you can do, that's probably going to be a different video, how to write unit tests for your code, such that unit test basically helps us to do like something like quality assurance for our code, such that when in the future when we come back and make modifications to any of these methods or any of this process, we are sure that the values, the results are always going to be accurate. So with the unit test, you're going to write a couple of passing a number of values and then the expected results, and then we're going to always check up all those values and the results, and to be sure that whenever we make modifications down the line in the future, calculator is always going to be correct. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments if you learned from this short video how to build your own BMI calculator using Python. For all the advanced Python users out there, let me know how you would have done this, areas that you would have done it better, whatever methods you would have used. And yeah, if you have questions as well for the new developers out there, if you have questions, if you have concerns, let me know in the comments. So look forward to the next video where we're building another application. Au d'abord, bye, au revoir.